Hello, good afternoon everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion on decarbonizing hard-to-abate sectors. I am Kaveri, I am Senior Associate with the Center for Study of Science, Technology and Policy, CSTEP, one of India's leading think tanks. We have a great panel of speakers here today. They bring with them a wide repertoire of knowledge that comes with deep engagement with the industries from a variety of perspectives. I'm very excited to host this panel and very grateful to the speakers for agreeing to join us. Let me now briefly introduce the panel. Starting with Dr. Madhulika Bhati. She is a principal scientist at the CSIR, National Institute of Science, Technology and Development Studies. She's an experienced scientist working towards mapping the research and technology interventions, in particular for water, energy, and agricultural sector nexus. She's currently involved in several projects by the government, industries, and CSIR in-house research projects. And we have Professor Rangan Banerjee. Professor Banerjee is the director of IIT Delhi. Previously, he was at IIT Bombay, where he served as the Forbes Marshall Chair Professor in the Department of Energy, Science and Engineering, which is a department that he helped start back in 2007. He is an authority in energy management, modeling of energy systems, energy planning and policy, etc. He has been involved in advising government bodies such as Niti Aayog, MNRE, and MOEFCC on energy issues, and worked with several Indian and international industries. Next, we have Dr. Shankar Venugopal here. He is a VP at Mahindra & Mahindra. He is a tech innovator with numerous granted patents and publications, and skilled in translating technology ideas into product innovations, focused on creating sustainable urban mobility solutions. He is an active member across several committees and organizations, including the Confederation of Indian Industries and National Committee on Technology, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, and National IP Committee. Very warm welcome to all the speakers here today. And I'm once again very excited to host this session on behalf of CSTEP. So let me start with a study we recently published called No Silver Bullets. That's the reason how we landed this gig here today as well. We put forth some of the often under-discussed questions related to net zero goals and scenarios while we were updating our model called Safari. So I want to ask the panel, what are some of the less discussed but crucial conversations around net zero, according to you? Professor Banerjee, can we start with you?
Net zero in industry? Yes.
In industry, from an industrial perspective, yes.
Okay, I think when you look at industry, and I guess the panel is focusing on hard-to-abate industries. We are talking of cement, steel, aluminum. In all of these, today, there are many possibilities, whether it is looking at keeping the process the same, but changing the supply mix. So whether you look at, steel, if you see we are looking at coal, you change the fuel mix, or you go for renewables. The next is you keep the process the same, but then take the exhaust which is going out and you do carbon capture and utilization and storage. And the third is change the process. All of these are possible. Technology exists, but changing an existing business where you are actually producing steel or cement with your kilns or your blast furnaces requires investment. So the question is, who's going to make that investment? Will all the industry decide to go ahead and do this? In the long run, of course, we can see that we can actually produce all of our products with getting towards net zero. But in the transition is the question where you need to have large-scale pilots, and pilots which are funded by the industry associations or the industry and the government, and then you have to see how you're going to realize this. So I think the challenge, Kaveri, is that we currently have an existing infrastructure. In many of these sectors, India has a significant global presence. If you look at steel, if you look at cement, if you look at aluminum, and predominantly all of it is currently based on fossil. In some cases, you could actually, if in aluminum you look at, we are getting electricity, we could source that electricity from hydro and renewable. So that's fairly easy because you leave the process intact. But in many other cases, it will need significant investments. So there is a roadmap towards going for net zero, but, and there are technologies existing, but then the question is, how and when are we going to make those changes? So I'll stop here and maybe come back later.
That's very interesting. So kind of like an inertia in the industries to transform can be said in some sense. So Dr. Venugopal, what are your perspectives from a transport point of view?
Sure. Yeah, so you could call me Shankar. And for me, there are 4 zeros that are very important in terms of making urban mobility sustainable. One is, of course, zero tailpipe emission. For a place like Delhi, you can appreciate the importance of having a zero tailpipe emission from all the vehicles. And that is possible today, absolutely possible. And electric is one of the approaches. What goes along with that is when you connect the vehicle for charging, you should ensure that the electricity is generated from renewable sources. Then you can be absolutely sure that it's a zero tailpipe emission. Absolutely. The second is zero accidents. The third is zero traffic jams. Even if you're in a place like Bangalore, zero traffic jams. And the last one is a zero initial investment. Today, electric car could be expensive for many of us. So how do I get the benefits of this electric car without investing, without making any real initial investment? Is this all possible? So that's a kind of a combination of challenges I'm trying to solve when I'm looking at making urban mobility sustainable. And I'm looking at combination of 4 disruptive forces: electric, connected, autonomous, and shared. With these 4, I'm very confident that we can meet all the 4 zeros. And it's not very far away, it's just around the corner. So we'll talk more about it as we go along. Sure.
That's very interesting that the transport sector, the boundary you have not drawn just around the vehicle, but as a total economic, its role in the...
And also if you observe what I said, 3 are technology disruptions: the electric, connected, and autonomous. The 4th, the shared, is more of a business model disruption.
Right.
So you need to mix and match the right business models and the right technologies to solve this.
Right.
Sure.
Very interesting, thank you. Dr. Bhati, can I have your perspectives being from a government organization like CSIR?
Yeah, thank you, Kaveri, to giving me this opportunity to share my experience and my know-how with all of you. My perspective, I would like to bring some new perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, right. So there is, whenever we talk about the net carbon zero, that it's quite possible, but it's like that we need to be thinking multi-dimensional way. Like only the industries, it's not only the whole responsibility of industry or a government, but we need to take some individual responsibility. It should be tackled as a citizen science project, right? So net zero, recently our honorable prime ministers, they have declared one Panchamrit. I really impressed by this one, and life missions, like the way you live. If you think about to change the supply, and then the demand will be changed. In this Panchamrit, they only not talk about the net carbon zero emissions on the industrial point of view. Yes, there is several other non-disruptive solutions are there, like afforestation will be required. Then secondly, like they also say, certainly the technology intervention will play a crucial role to achieve this net carbon zero emissions. Even if we look at the railway sector, they recently said that even only some kind of modernization can be happen in a railway sectors, then we will able to reduce almost 60 million carbon dioxide emission reductions, right? And then there is also a possibility that as I just would like to add on our director IIT talk, that existing infrastructure is available. But I would like to say, in particular in hard to abate sector, if we take the example of steel industries, there is current practices like that we use a blast furnace and use the coke and coal to make in steel making. But the efficiency of these technologies, if you look at the different country perspective, is also different. If you look at the same technology which are using in Japan or using in China, then their carbon dioxide emissions is significantly different as compared to our country, but the current practices we are doing. So there is also a lot of scope to improvisation of the existing technology. Yeah, definitely, because I do mapping. My research area is just to look at the current research which is developing in different countries. So new technology is also coming in this area in the steel making, and where there is a significant chances to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions. And steel is not only for the reason for the carbon dioxide, but it's also for the NOx, SOx, and the PM, particulate emission. So significantly we use with the new interventions, as well as like the improvisation of the existing technology intervention. Secondly, when we talk about the techno-economic perspective of any technology, suppose if we talk about this hydrogen economy, then always we think about the cost in terms of the economics, right? We never think about the environmental dimensions and the social dimensions. But I think this environmental impact category is equally important as the economic benefits, right? Because they also associated with certain cost. There is a recent study where they said there is a reduction. If you reduce 1 kg of carbon dioxide emission, it is equal to $49. So that's how we communicate to the society. The science communications and dissemination is really important. If there is some kind of holistic assessment of any emerging technology which we are planning to use to achieve our net carbon dioxide emissions, then we need to be thinking in a different way, not only in the economic term. We need an environmental assessment. We also need a social assessment. So that's, I would like to start, just some kind of different perspective I would like to be giving this, our discussions, and I would like to be here from my other colleagues as well, fellows. Thank you.
Okay, that's very interesting that you brought up the LIFE and the LIFE program that was announced at COP. And definitely the demand side has a big impact on how industries are shaped and how they can go forward with their decarbonization activities. So now, next, I want to get into a bit of specifics next, tapping into your respective fields of expertise. So Professor Banerjee, again, I'm starting with you. Sir, you've heralded energy departments in IITs and worked closely with government agencies and created useful models and tools like the IESS. For the uninitiated, IESS is India Energy Security Scenarios. It's an openly available tool that is available for experimentation. So as a modeler myself, I'm curious to know your views on the role of energy models and academia in general in informing decision-making process in the context of decarbonization of industries. If you could delineate a bit on the usefulness, limitations, and generally the way forward in the discourse.
So let me give you some examples, Kaveri. I think when we think in terms of decarbonization of an industry, let's say we are talking of a large industry which has a blast furnace, and we are looking at you look at the entire system and you want to see if in that we want to inject a certain percentage of, let's say, hydrogen. Now, one way of doing this is, of course, you can do all the calculations, but you can also create a model of your existing infrastructure and then see what happens and what is the proportion of the injection that you can get without actually affecting the parameters. So you can create a model of reality and then look at the retrofit and then use that to look at that decision. So this is one type of model. The second type which we can think of for the industry is we're looking at a long-term plan, and you want to decarbonize. You look at the existing and you model and see with the existing, I have so many tons of CO2 per ton of steel or so many tons of CO2 per ton of cement. If I do the following things, what happens to the investment? So you can use it also to look at sort of investment decisions. But the key thing in all of this is this needs a iteration between the user and the modeler. And often what happens is we do models in isolation. That means we create a model because we will make it significantly mathematically interesting and challenging, and we will create that. But we need to be able to think of models as an aid to decision making. And this will imply that the user community interfaces with the modelers. This does not happen to the extent that it should. And I think this is very critical in the area of decarbonization in the industrial sector, because we are looking at transitions, and transitions involve costs. And so we can actually look at, there are multiple pathways by which the nation can go to net zero by 2070. There are multiple pathways by which each company can look at going towards net zero. We at IIT Delhi are planning to make our campus net zero, and we are looking at different pathways in which we can do that. So I think there is a very significant role of models, because it's much easier to create a model which replicates reality rather than experiment with real life solutions and then find out it was more costly.
That's, couldn't agree more with those words. So, Dr. Venugopal, there is a lot of cutting edge research and innovation happening in sustainable mobility, particularly electric mobility. So from our analysis, we find that transport is a crucial sector, not only from the point of view of vehicular emissions, like you rightly pointed out earlier, but because of its crosstalk with other emissions heavy sectors. So being in the top leadership of one of the front runners in electric mobility, Mahindra, my question to you is, what is your view on the impact of electrification on other sectors in the economy? For instance, increased power demand or critical materials and so on.
Yeah. The traditional automotive industry was just making vehicles and selling. But today we see the convergence of three industries: the automotive, the power, and also the infrastructure. So I can't deliver a mobility solution without thinking of all these three things together. If we take an electric vehicle, we need sufficient power. See, all of us have, say, electric car, and we all go back home, and at 6 in the evening we connect it for charging. The grid won't be able to take it, today's grid, so we need to plan for that. Second, when we go out, we need to charge the vehicle. At some point or the other, we are going to run out of charge, so we need charging infrastructure. Without charging infrastructure, nobody would be willing to switch from an engine vehicle to an electric vehicle. So infrastructure becomes equally important. So now we are looking at how we can bring these three industries together so that we can deliver an end-to-end mobility solution rather than just building an electric vehicle and selling it to people. That's not going to solve the problem. But when we try to do that, there are a few challenges and bottlenecks. One is, it takes time and money to build the charging infrastructure. Especially people want fast charging. So you're so used to driving out of a petrol station in 5-10 minutes, not more than that. So you want a fast charging station which can charge at least 80-85% in about 30 minutes. That's expensive. So we need to innovate in terms of low-cost fast charge stations. How do we build that? And this is again technology and business model, combination of both. The second is the energy storage itself, the batteries. The batteries today, the lithium-ion battery pack is the best one, and we don't have lithium. Lithium is limited to very few geographies: Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, more recently Australia. That's it, nowhere else. So we need to think of how are we going to mitigate the risk around supply of these critical materials when we are going to make so many electric cars. Each car would need at least anywhere between 5,000 to 7,000 cells, depending on the range of the vehicle. So we are looking at very large-scale production of these lithium-ion batteries. Preferably, if you do it in India, that's going to be the best situation. Not just the packs, but the cells itself, if we can make in India. So mitigating this supply risk around critical materials also means we should think in a circular economic framework where we can get these batteries back, recycle, retrieve maximum amount of critical materials and put them back into the batteries. That becomes very important for a country like India. So all of this basically boils down to thinking from the end in sight, how do I design my parts, the overall vehicle in such a way that it is recyclable end of the day, and it is also affordable and accessible. That becomes very critical to make sure that all of us benefit from this technology. Electric is just one part of the story. Most of the electric vehicles will also have the smart and connected features. So many of your worries like the range anxiety will go away because it's a connected car. There's an umbilical cord which takes care of you, knows where you are and how much charge is still left in the car. So the company will take care of you. So that's how the connected features come in a big way. And people may think that autonomous, we can't think of it on Indian roads, but definitely yes, autonomous still has a application potential in India. We do make semi-autonomous tractors because there is an acute shortage of manpower in the villages. So we make tractors, women-friendly tractors and semi-autonomous tractors we make where the autonomous features take care and make it easy to operate. Same with the mining or border patrolling, so many applications we can think of autonomous. Last is a shed to keep the cost low so that, see, you buy an expensive car and you use it for 1 or 2 hours in a day. That's not the best usage of the utility. So Ola or Uber may use it for 12 to 18 hours, so the return on investment is much faster. So this whole thing will work for India if you look at a combination of electric, connected, autonomous, and shared. That's very important for us to look at it holistically.
That's very interesting. It's like an end-to-end solution has to be thought of for every sector.
Just one more point I wanted to add from a modeling perspective. Since there was so much worry about availability of lithium, we did do a piece of work on systems dynamic modeling for lithium availability. And it's not very difficult to predict the demand versus supply for future scenarios. And we have done this about 4 or 5 years back, and so far the predictions are holding good. So there are ways in which one can handle this. It's not that difficult. Sure.
Okay, that's very reassuring to know that such kind of, again, and that connects to the previous question of modeling and the value of it. So on a similar vein, hydrogen is another concept that has been gaining considerable traction in the clean energy conversations. Dr. Madhulika, I'm aware that your team at CSIR has been doing some very important work on hydrogen, the techno-economic and environmental feasibility assessment to begin with. So with respect to the uptake of hydrogen in the industries, I wanted to understand from you what are some of the challenges in its adoption? And also, since we are in a gas conclave right now, what do you see is the role of natural gas in India's hydrogen economy? And whether, in your opinion, is leapfrogging to green hydrogen a good option for India?
Here I would like to take some example. I will say the overall hydrogen economy challenges in terms of economic terms, like cost effectiveness, also in the environmental terms, and what the scientists, social scientists and environmental scientists' voices are capturing in the different ongoing research, right? And second, I will give an example of a steel industries like that. So everyone knows that our iron and steel industries, they are the lifeblood of a modern economies, right? But they are also responsible for 7% of global emissions of this carbon dioxide emissions. So India recently pledged to reach the carbon dioxide emission, this carbon neutrality to 0 by 2070s, and we are seeking for some deep decarbonization strategies so that we can achieve this target. And low carbon mitigation technologies is everyone wants to develop such kind of technologies, right? In the steel industries currently we are practicing like the blast furnace based, or like where we use the coal and coke like that. But now the recent new technology interventions are also coming like that. Direct electrical arc technologies are available where they use the hydrogen to produce in the steel making instead of this carbon coal like that. So we need to look at the different new interventions in those areas like and the green hydrogen if you look at the, all the hydrogen rainbow spectrums, there are different kind of hydrogens are available, but India just declared their green hydrogen. So somehow the green hydrogens, why we choose this green hydrogen as compared to the other gray hydrogen, blue hydrogens. So somehow what I feel as a social scientist perspective and the environmental science perspective, that our now we more inclined towards the to think towards the environmental dimension and the social dimension as well. So these green hydrogens promising us about the because there is no carbon dioxide as a byproducts. So no carbon dioxide emission will be happen if we use these green hydrogens there. But however, if you look at holistically, look at this green hydrogen whole value chain, still there is several challenges which social scientists and environmental scientists are continuously talking about in the recent research, like that, what about the water footprint to use this one? If we opt for the electrolyzer, like a main technology to generate the hydrogen, so because there is a certain figure we need to be considered this one. It's not about that we want to be criticized of any emerging technology. It's like that we can prepare ourselves more responsibly. Like that, more responsibly. Later on, the repercussion will should not be in an, adversely affect our environment or our own life. Like, so we need to be consider all these dimensions. Like, suppose there is a data that 9 liter water is required for a 1 kg of hydrogen productions. Just think about that one. And then there is a data also, the groundwater extraction is already 70% to 100% more in our, in Indian various cities, various states. Third data is Niti Aayog recently released a report where they say there is a several states going to be zero water, water stress, very water scarcity is there. One thing, yeah, desalination, but still there is a desalination of the water is a one hope. Then again, we need to be consider the cost for the desalination of water to convert them, which will be more suitable for the hydrogen. This is the one challenge. That challenge can be used, can be overcome with the use of technology interventions. Yeah, desalination techniques is one option, but we need to look at the additional cost associated with this one. If it is and then again, in the total cost, again, the social cost and the environmental cost need to be, if we don't do anything and if we do things, then we need to think in a balancing manner. Second thing, yes, second voice is like that, this hydrogen may be a region for the stratospheric ozone depletion. So this ozone depletion terms, again, because the whole exercise to achieve the net zero economy, and there is also we are facing this ozone depletion and then global warming potential. So hydrogen should not be the other region, again the region for this ozone depletions, and then again the region to, instead to improve the global warming effect, it's again should not be the region for the global warming, to enhance in the global warming potential. These different dimensions, then again the leakage one. Yes, definitely the social scientists and environmental scientists is continuously several researches going on like that. There is a possibility for the leakage from 1% to 20%. Like people are saying that this natural gas is transitional fuel. I'm talking about like during the transportation, if we use the same pipeline, if we think about the whole, whole change in the infrastructures of this pipeline, then there is a less possibility like a 0.1 to 1%. But if we are thinking about the retrofitting of this pipeline to transport these hydrogen fuels, then there is a certain data researchers are for several universities saying that 20% leakage is there. And when we are thinking about the scaling up of this hydrogen production, so in future, it's again a question about, then we need to think about that if there is a leakage of in this diverse range, 1% to 20%, then this is the time to think about that one. And for the leakage, again, because in the hydrogen, it's a very small molecule, very, it's colorless, odorless, it can't be sensed by the humans. Like, there is a big difference between the natural gas and the hydrogen. So hydrogen can't be seen, like if it is a leakage is there, but the main question is coming that sensors are available, but the sensors who can detect the hydrogen before their threshold, because it's highly flammable. Such kind of sensor. I see this challenge as an opportunity, like some kind of technology intervention where the sensor can detect this hydrogen leakage before its threshold limit. Like what I mean to say, because hydrogen is highly, flammable. So in that way, technology intervention, I still found that there is several technology interventions where our researchers are working, like the palladium-based sensors, which can detect this hydrogen leakage on that point as well. So these are the voices are coming from the research community. So we need to be consider all those things when we are considering hydrogen as a promising fuel. If we consider right now, so that will be, it will helpful for us to develop our hydrogen economy in a more responsible way. Thank you.
And that was very interesting to hear about the possible trappings of one of the most touted fuel for future. And it's really the importance of knowing the whole end-to-end solutions for each of these technologies is really coming to the front in this conversation. So again, we are situated in a gas conclave after all, and I'm curious to know the panel's views on natural gas as a transition fuel, like Madhulika ji had mentioned. We know that transitioning to net zero requires not only technology and finance, but also ensured supply of critical materials required for these technologies, like Dr. Venugopal had mentioned. Now, this might lead to unanticipated competition among sectors, making it harder to shift. In this context is what natural gas has been touted as a transition fuel, or as a low carbon alternative to coal, while the renewable supply chain technology becomes economically viable. But there is also the counter argument, especially with the recently seen gas price volatility and our import dependence on gas, that investing in gas will crowd out investments in the long-term clean energy solutions, as well as risk carbon lock-in because of the huge infrastructure requirement that is required. So I want to understand your views regarding this. This is an open question. Whoever wants to go first can please.
You want to wait for me? This is a tricky thing. I think, we have to see if the natural gas price is right. There are many, many points at which natural gas can substitute coal and oil. And I think price is key in the transition. If we look at the whole idea of when we have a higher share of renewables, we need to have storage and flexibility. And very clearly, there are many roles for natural gas. But those roles will depend on the price at which that natural gas is available. And one can look at, when we go through the transition, looking at hybridization of gas with renewables, so that you can have a supply which is and you can actually make the transition in a way where it has less disruption. However, I think at the present prices doesn't look in many of the applications, if you look at it, it doesn't look like it's a cost-effective solution in the short run. So there is definitely a potential role. You can provide flexibility, we can integrate hybridize natural gas with renewables for many applications, and even the hydrogen question. I know we are committed to green hydrogen, but today more than 90% of the hydrogen is from steam methane reforming of natural gas. So that's the way in which we are using hydrogen, and so there could be, one can think of making a transition where you get used to using hydrogen, starting with gray and blue, and then going to green, while we look at how to make green cost effective. And I think planning the transition, planning the investments in the transition, the costs and who bears those costs are important questions. There are not technological questions, but they affect the way in which the technologies will be taken up.
So, like natural gas as a standby fuel in a hybrid mode is a very interesting perspective.
Sure. See, honestly, a country like India needs a multimodal and multi-fuel strategy. We can't, none of us are experts enough to say that this is the only fuel, this is the only technology which is going to be the future. So we should be prepared for multiple scenarios with the right technologies. Depending on what happens, we should be able to quickly respond to that. That becomes more important for us. So ideally, I would say that I'd be fuel agnostic. And even if I take the electric path, for me, the battery will still be a black box. I won't limit myself to only the lithium chemistry. But I'll have certain numbers to keep track. For example, whatever be the battery, it should be less than $100 per kilowatt hour. Because if that happens, electric will become economically more viable than the IC engine. So I should have such numbers to track rather than specific chemistries or specific fuels. What should be the cost of transportation per kilometer per person? Those kind of things. So that it allows me to mix and match personally owned vehicles, public transportation, last mile connectivity, so many things I should be able to mix and match to achieve that specific cost. That becomes easier for us. And it's also, what is important is when we do all this, it's very important to have a roadmap. Without roadmap, see, the government spends a lot of money funding a lot of good research, but all this individual research don't add up. We can't stitch them together and achieve something today because it's all very scattered. If you look at this, to have this kind of a computing power, if I want to access it every day, in early 2000, I should be one of the top few millionaires in India to do this. But today, all of us are carrying this around because the semiconductor industry had this roadmap, what we call as a Moore's law. So although even competing companies had one common roadmap to follow, and they could achieve it, and it becomes so affordable. So if we want to do the same with energy and mobility, we should have one national level roadmap. You have done something for lightweighting, you are doing something for the batteries. I think every subsector within mobility or energy, we should have well-defined roadmaps, at least for the next 10 years, and use those roadmaps to drive all R&D funding so that everything nicely adds up. I think that is the key to achieving this transition in a very smooth way. Sure.
That's very interesting. I also wanted to ask you regarding the hard-to-abate sector in transport, the freight question. So do you see an increased role of natural gas in freight while it is currently not amenable to electrification?
Yeah, possible. So the small vehicles that I am focused on in the city commute is very different from this long distance trucks and buses. That's going to be a very, very different story. But I don't have much expertise in that area. So that's why I would wait for others experts to talk about it.
So I think, Kaveri, you raise an important question. When you think in terms of shipping, when you think in terms of heavy-duty trucks, and then what happens is if you look at batteries and the kind of weight which is being put on it, I think that is a natural point where it could be something which is, one can think of LNG directly, and there are solutions. There are also possibilities of looking at fuel cell and hydrogen and looking at, so that's a niche which I think is something where the hydrogen versus electric vehicle is a different kind of niche, and also that is something where one can think of LNG and gas-based solutions. So if you look at the entire another thing is even today we have a large number of diesel engine generators. So we had a project with one of the companies where we converted the diesel engine generators to hydrogen generators and compressed biogas. So there are actually a large number of technologies possible, but in order for these technologies to scale, I think not just roadmaps, sufficient amount of investments, and looking at something where you are looking at strategically planning for 3 to 5 years down the line, not the ready-made technologies itself.
Okay. Dr. Bhati, do you have anything to add in this conversation?
Yeah, thank you. I think our director IIT Delhi and Dr. Venugopal sir very, exhaustively explained all of these things. But just I want to say regarding the management kind of things like that, because it's a, whatever we talk about these emerging technologies specific to energy sectors, they are the cross-cutting across the sectors, right? Okay. So these basically these many cross-cutting interdependencies among the sectors are there that finally determine the extent of abatement possible in any sector. When we talk about either this hydrogen economy or the natural gas like that, and not a single solution, because we need to be think in a holistic manner in the energy mix. It's not only about the hydrogen will solve the problems or a EV will solve the problems. We need to be think that all these technologies, upcoming technologies are important, and they all have their pivotal role to achieve this our net carbon zero emissions like that. And even, Dr. Venugopal sir, he raised the question that we have certain kind of roadmap like that. So suppose I am saying that is for the steel making of, so far whatever the assessment generally happens like an energy sector, like it's always on the country basis or a sector basis, right? But if you look at the industrial point of view, each industry, this steel plant has their own configurations, like they have their own geographical location. They do have their, so some kind of plant-based assessment is required. What I mean to say that, it's a border level, the country level analysis is required, but also in each and like the optimization of particular plants, and that will be really helpful. That if we start from this, like that, some kind of assessment can be done on a plant-based, so that would be really helpful for us. And then definitely, because it's a cross-cutting interdependencies, so cross-cutting relevant activity across the sector is required. What I feel that some kind of collective approach, collaboration among the industry, government, and the academia is required. Collecting the information, integrating, then synthesizing, and then distribution of this one on some common platform where we can share the best practices among ourselves. So that will really help prepare all of us to, in this common mission. The good thing is this, that we have to achieve a common mission by using the different pathways. That's all I want to say, right?
So we're having very interesting conversations indeed on this in this session. So again and again, one theme that keeps coming back is this cross-cutting interdependencies, or this long-term plan, the requirement of a long-term roadmap, and the investments that needs to be catalyzed for actual action to happen on ground. So my final question from my side, we'll open it up to the audience next, is how do you think we can facilitate dialogue and better interaction between these otherwise siloed sectors in order to identify leverage points and catalyze real action on ground? It's again an open question. Anybody who's...
Maybe I will start with
Yes,
this.
please.
Because I'm very keen about this industry-academia collaboration. I've always been in industry trying to figure out what would make it easy for the two sides to collaborate. Then last 3-4 years, DST has this funding called Industry Relevant Research, where they say the proposal should have 2 investigators, one from industry and one from academia. And government will fund that part of the research, which is the basic research part. And the applied part, the industry should fund. It's almost like a 50-50. And industry also should take this technology to the market. I think those kind of models are very important for us at this stage to really drive that industry-academia collaboration and making sure something tangible comes out of it. Otherwise, we collaborate, but we don't see that impact coming out of that. I think this kind of alignment would really help. And it goes without saying that
So
industry academia can also be government and the startups also coming in together to drive this, so that we set big goals and together we should have a consortia-based approach to achieve these goals. Yeah.
And in your experience, this mechanism has been a good working
This
model?
mechanism is good,
Okay,
actually.
okay.
We should have more of such mechanisms.
Okay,
True.
that's a good
Yeah.
takeaway.
If allow, I would also add on this one.
Yes, please,
Venugopal, sir.
please,
And it's
please,
really a good idea about the, whenever we, at the starting of the proposal or a concept level, if the inception of industry is over there, then that really will make it, some kind of successful, some kind of proof of concepts can be developed on proof of, like a prototypes like that. Sometimes what happens when we are doing the research in a silo level and our own concepts, we flow, and then some kind of blue sky research happens most of the time, right? But the industry inception, since the beginning of any academia or the what kind of R&D organizations, this will be really helpful to know about the real conditions like that. Second thing, I just want to be share this, take this opportunity to like that, such kind of DST, Department of Science and Technology, which Venugopal sir shared, that kind of project proposal where the one partner from the industry and the one partner from the academia or R&D organization. In the same line, the CSIR are also running several kind of programs. There is an immediately programs are there where we can, the industry can submit a proposal along with their academia partner or some R&D organizations, and CSIR is coming forward to, hand-holding to achieve the target what we really want to do, which can solve somehow our real problems, right? So not like just a blue sky research, where like that, so that industry can help us further to facilitate for a mass scale productions like that. So such kind of scheme within the CSIR also, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I would welcome that if industry can explore this kind of program as well at in CSIR, right? Okay, thank you.
To ensure the buy-in from the respective industry from the beginning itself, this kind of model seemed to be working. And it brings back to the earlier point that Professor Banerjee had mentioned also for models, that the interaction with the industry and the stakeholders should be primary, like right from the beginning, to ensure its usefulness. So, sir, would you like to add anything further to this concept?
Yes. So, firstly, I'd like to just invite all of you who are from the industry. We have, on the 10th of this month, we have an industry day where we showcase all the different models and the products at IIT Delhi, and it's free of cost, but you need to register for it. I think we do have mechanisms, but what we have and the number of, we have examples also, but relatively, all of it is it's at a very low level of aspiration. And to actually do this, we need to think of how we work together so that we can provide a competitive advantage for our industry. So long-term strategic linkages. We also have a mechanism where we have a research and innovation park where the industry can actually have an office in our campus where you interface directly with it. So basically the problem still remains that we do solve short-term problems, but there is a gap. We produce something which is like a prototype. That prototype to scale needs a lot of work, and the industry wants something today, which is tried and tested. We don't have that. We have the capability to develop that. We have a capability to create your prototype, and you need to be able to then, whether it's industry, government, invest in 2-3 years to make that go to the market. And that is the crux of the problem, because if you look at any ecosystem, it's an academia industry ecosystem. In order for us to catalyze that ecosystem, we need to believe in each other and make those kind of significant investments. Today, last year, we got about 50 crores of funding from industry in IIT Delhi in research. And it's a growing amount, but it's a small amount in the order of magnitude of what is really required if we want to make a major difference. And I think if we are thinking long term, we need to figure out ways to scale and partner in a more meaningful way. But I completely resonate with the points made by the panelists.
Yeah, so I think at this point, this is a good point to open it up to the actual industry folks that we have gathered here. So do we have any questions or comments from the panel, from the audience that the panel can take? Can we get a mic? I see a few hands are up. Please introduce yourself and then give the comment.
Good afternoon, sir. Myself Ranjit, I'm from Andhra Pradesh Economic Development Board, Government of Andhra Pradesh. So my question is, the EV wave, the electronic mobility wave, has boiled down to lithium-ion technologies and the accessibility to lithium minerals. And clearly we don't have the access to resources over there. And now, while going to hydrogen, green hydrogen, it is boiling down to fuel cells and electrolyzers. So are there any roadblocks for India to be the hub of manufacturing fuel cells and electrolyzers? And what are the road gaps and the challenges in this sector?
It's a very difficult question which needs quite a lot of time. So, but basically the first thing is, I don't think it, even in batteries, I don't think everything ends with lithium ion. People are looking at sodium sulfur. We're looking at a whole host of different kind of batteries. Technologies can evolve. In the case of fuel cells and hydrogen, overnight, we cannot create an ecosystem. So the roadblock is that, everyone is competing. There are already ecosystems out there. We have an aspiration that we want to create and we want to be the hub. To create that aspiration, we need to make the investments required in terms of funding, resources, people, and get that together. There are signs that that might happen, but in the case, if you look at the past, when we had our entire solar mission, we missed the bus in terms of manufacturing. Now we are trying to do that. So it's not going to happen in a business as usual case. And I think it is government, industry, research organizations need to get together.
Sure. So I will add to that. It's a genuine concern that you shared, but also keep in mind that there are a lot of interesting developments in the manufacturing sector also. A lot of new technologies coming in, which is making manufacturing a lot more easier and less capital intensive than what it was in the past. Just to give you an example, when you hear about these gigafactories for the battery manufacturing, but look at the other end of the spectrum. There are these micro factories where you can make complete electric car in a space less than this hall. Okay, there's a company called Arrival. It is a UK-based company which has an order for about 10,000 minivans from the US Postal Department, and they rolled out their very first minivan, and that was made in maybe half the size of this hall. So these are micro factories, and if you see videos of that, it's all robotic arms handling and autonomous platforms, moving things around. So a lot of interesting developments in the manufacturing domain, which makes it quite possible to look at these things, doing it in a modular way, more of integration at scale, also at a reasonable cost. So I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to crack this because of newer materials and newer manufacturing methods coming in. But everything needs planning and also a lot of investment because we are doing it for the first time. We need to do that, sure.
I think I totally agree with my fellows that whatever they say, there's some kind of ecosystem need to be created which can create an enabling environment. And then, yes, definitely different technologies are coming, different new opportunities are coming. We should be hopeful for that one. But in the realistic scenario, yes, I feel that some kind of like that, okay, we will be a manufacturing hub for a fuel cell or what kind of, there is a great possibility for manufacturing the electrolyzers, but what kind of ingredient is required for this one, we need to be look at them carefully. Investment will be the first one. If we do have enough investment for the proper R&D like that, then only it will be possible. So some kind of realistic, we need to be some kind of realistic, real calculation that what is feasible or what is not feasible, what is achievable or what is not achievable. But somehow what I say in terms of international, that we have missed the bus, but our main target like a self-efficiencies, right? Some kind of indigenous development. So what I am saying, even we develop any kind of technology later, but if somehow we do have some indigenous capability to develop those things, so that will be, strengthening our this manufacturing environment, strengthening our manufacturing backbone. So I still hopeful that it's not about a competition is there, but for the indigenous, capability to develop those things is also much required. So we need to be continuously make efforts towards them, so that some kind of indigenous capability can be developed at our national level, right?
Hello. So good evening, greetings to the respected panel and my dear friends. Hello, good evening, greetings to the respected panel and my dear friends. So actually my basic approach, what I have learned from the entire session is that we need to be very optimistic regarding the sustainable development goals, the attainment of the sustainable development goals holistically. And we have been progressing towards it in a well appreciable manner as being recognized by the UNDP as per their statistical facts. So, but the vision being developed by our respected Prime Minister to actually develop the 500 gigawatt by 2030, that is in the next 8 years. And currently it is 57 gigawatt, that is nearly, we have to do it 10 times within 8 years. So, so as you have said, that we need to develop the multimodal approach with the right technology and with proper optimization. And we need to also go through the phase of transition of the natural gas until we develop into the hydrogen-based economy. So, sir, is it actually possible that within 8 years, we would be able to achieve this particular goal?
I'll take a shot to start with, then
Sure,
others can add. It's very important for us to recognize that we have moved from an incremental linear world to an exponential world now. All the technologies that we are talking about are growing exponentially, and the cost of those technologies is also falling exponentially. So 8 years, we may achieve earlier than 8 years also, because everything is exponential, and we are looking at convergence of multiple such exponential technologies. So a lot of us as experts will go wrong in trying to predict. When multiple exponential technologies are converging, it's very difficult to predict. So things can happen earlier than this 8 years also, okay? Evidences are, in the last 10 years, the cost of photovoltaic solar cells have become 1/10 of what it used to be. The cost of energy storage in lithium-ion batteries used to be more than $1,200. Today we are at $120. So it's about, in the last 7 years, it's fallen to 1/10. There are a lot of such evidences where technology, the cost of technology is falling exponentially. So we are in that nonlinear mode right now. So a lot of things will be possible. But if you ask yourself or any of the experts around, they may hesitate because they are used to that incremental linear world. But now we are already into a nonlinear exponential world. So be prepared to get surprises like this. It will very well happen.
Sir, but actually the phase which we are going on economically, it's actually a little turbulent. That is, if we consider the overall geopolitical crisis and the global environment in which we are actually living as of now. So, so the progress which we have been able to attain exponentially in last 7 to 8 years, and now the next 8 years, considering the Ukraine-Russia turmoil which is going on, the situation of restlessness which is going on. So is it actually possible? Because I think that that for the global demand of hydrogen is actually expected to be 340 million tons per annum by 2050. So is this actually possible in the current scenario of global turmoil?
So I think to get back to your earlier question, if you look at what we committed in Paris, and we have we are one of the few countries where we are clearly on that trajectory. Now, when we set some target in the future, that is something which we work towards. And so we got from our emission intensity reduction of 1/3 to now we are going to 45%, we are going to 50% renewables. The transitions are to be planned. And you have possible futures. The question is, it is possible? Yes, of course it is possible. The question then is that as we go towards it, what are the implications of it? And then you have certain things, you have ups and downs where suddenly you have a shortage, right? And because you have stranded assets, there are many, many details that we need to work towards. The Prime Minister has given us a goal because we want, as a country, this is a direction in which we want to move. As professionals who are working in that sector, we need to work towards the detailing of what is involved in that goal. It's not an easy target. And you are rightly, the other issue which is there is you can see in all our distribution companies, we have accumulated losses. Now, what does that mean? In the initial phase, we were guaranteeing a fixed price when we had renewables. Today, as you go for higher and higher renewables, that's not going to be possible. Because the renewables, every aspect beyond, you can work out the numbers, beyond a certain point, if you keep on adding PV, every unit of that I add through PV has to go through storage before it is sold.
Yes.
So, which means the rules of the game will be different. Then when we think in terms of, the renewables, they are on one particular region of you look at south, you look at west. Most of our coal and our power plants are coming in from central India, from the east. Many of these states, the economy depends on coal. So I think it is not easy. And we need to look at the transition, plan what happens, and see that in the process, it does not affect development, whether regional this and this. And this is where I think technologies and systems, so I don't have an answer for you, but I think what has been put there is a goal. How we reach that goal, what are the details, are challenges for us to meet.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
May I add a few lines?
Okay.
Because you have started this question with the Sustainable Development Goal, right?
Yes.
Sustainable Development Goal, if we look at the history of the Sustainable Development Goal, previously we do have a Millennium Development Goal till 2015. And after 2015, then we say that MDG will be converted to the SDG. Somehow there was this thing in the inequality of the different dimension, like MDG is more toward the economic, towards some economic dimension, but this SDG was the environmental dimension, social dimension. All these three pillars has been considered in the SDGs. We recently, me and Kaveri was just, share a platform with the UN, some workshop like that. We are talking about certain technology. We set some targets. Yeah, definitely target give us some kind of motivation that we need to be achieved them in a certain time framework. The SDG also have a certain, time framework that we need to be achieved it by 2030, and more than halfway we have already covered. Yeah. So we also say, not about this SDG 7 covers the energy sufficiency, how we can energy security talk about. The other, so I will give you some kind of
Madhulika
scenario that this SDG, some of the SDG is still less addressed as compared to the other one. Secondly, if you look at in the specific to SDG 7, we are talking about the renewable energy mix, but here in the very bottom line for the bottom of pyramid people, they are talking about the accessibility of the energy for all the time, right? So, so look at the big gaps in there, but somehow whatever the commitment, whatever the pledges, we are saying the overall aim, how to reduce, how to create a holistic environment for the human being, technology-led progress as well as environment-led progress go, parallelly we can progress in there. Yeah, definitely time frame work is important, but uncertainty or what kind of, you talked about the Ukraine, it's not in anyone's hands and it's not in control, but I think it doesn't mean we should need to be continuously move forward towards this. Right.
Thank you so much. The hour has really flown by and the conversations is not ending. Thank you very much for agreeing to join us today in this great conversation.